Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're tuning in today, you already know the sheer dedication and, let's be totally honest here, the small fortune it actually takes to maintain a thriving aquatic setup. As hobbyists, we pour our hearts, our souls, and a ton of our time into perfectly dialing in those water parameters. It's absolutely a labor of love. But there is a hidden pitfall that so many dedicated aquarists eventually run into. We call it the DIY trap. Today, we're analyzing some fantastic source material from Saltwater Reef Co. to figure out exactly when our absolute best efforts just aren't cutting it anymore, and when it's finally time to bite the bullet and call in a pro.
So I want you to be honest with yourself for just a second. Is your aquarium a genuinely relaxing hobby, or is it a source of endless stress? Seriously, we've all had those late-night moments just staring at the glass, wondering why on earth things are going sideways when we are doing everything right. Okay, let's dive into this, because when problems just keep returning, or they actually get worse despite your really careful troubleshooting, well, it can signal a much deeper issue that goes way beyond standard care.
Section 1. The DIY aquarium trap. When routines fail.
You know, healthy aquariums absolutely rely on predictable routines. But the thing is, sometimes those routines actually fail us. Let's establish our baseline here. Standard routine care. We're talking your basic testing, scraping the glass, those minor little adjustments. That stuff is fantastic for day-to-day maintenance. But when complex issues start popping up, that's when you really need a specialized pro assessment. A professional brings in specialized testing equipment and literally years of pattern recognition. They don't just look at your tank as a box of water and fish, they see it as this intricately linked biological and mechanical machine.
Moving right along to Section 2. Invisible threats. Water and gear issues.
And this brings us to a kind of mysterious escalation in our aquatic journey. The threats that we just can't easily see with the naked eye. If you find yourself nodding your head in pure frustration at cloudy water that simply will not clear up, or aggressive frequent algae blooms, or maybe wild, sudden swings in your ammonia and nitrates, well, pay close attention. These recurring issues very often mean that your biological filtration is fundamentally compromised. You can't actually see the beneficial bacteria dying off, right? But these are the incredibly visible symptoms of a completely invisible crisis.
But here's the kicker. Invisible threats aren't just biological, they're mechanical too. Just think about what happens when your heaters start overshooting their target temp, or your filters are underperforming, or your air pumps are running weak. And honestly, perhaps the most frustrating issue of the whole bunch is getting inconsistent test results. When what you are visibly seeing in the tank simply doesn't match what your test kit is telling you, the culprit is often an invisible hardware failure. You could be dealing with improper flow rates, clogged internal filtration, or even faulty thermostats creating this invisible temperature instability.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the absolutely most insidious problems a hobbyist can face. It's called sensor drift. So this is when your testing equipment actually loses its calibration, basically feeding you numbers that are completely detached from reality. You think your parameters are sitting perfect, while your biofilter is just quietly breaking down in the background. A pro? They have the proper, high-end instrumentation to spot this kind of thing immediately.
Section 3. Living signs, fish and algae indicators. So if those invisible issues aren't resolved quickly, they escalate into very distressing, very visible signs. We're talking gasping at the surface, clamped fins, rapid breathing, darting around erratically, severe lethargy, or just prolonged periods of hiding. These physical symptoms are literally your fish sounding the alarm. But here's the extreme danger for the DIY aquarist. Trying to guess whether this is environmental stress, an actual disease, or even just tank mate compatibility is incredibly difficult. And guessing wrong in this situation, it can be fatal.
This is especially true when you're dealing with recurring illnesses or parasite concerns. If you have been treating the tank and the medications just aren't working, or maybe the symptoms magically vanish only to come back rapidly, or multiple fish are being repeatedly affected, you know what? You've hit a wall. You need an expert evaluation. A professional doesn't just guess, they review the entire treatment history, they assess the underlying water quality drivers, and they implement a highly controlled, strictly evidence-based approach to quarantine and recovery.
This also completely reframes our understanding of algae. Look, a little occasional algae, totally normal. But persistent algae that returns with an absolute vengeance right after you trim the plants and do massive water changes? Yeah, that points to deeper root causes. It could be a fundamental imbalance in nutrients, a flawed lighting schedule, incorrect CO2 levels, or just poor filtration performance. An aquatic specialist is going to evaluate these specific drivers, completely shifting the focus from you constantly cleaning the tank to actually fixing the root imbalance.
Which brings us to Section 4, the crisis tipping point, urgent situations.
If those living signs are ignored, the situation turns highly, highly volatile. We are talking about sudden crashes or quick fish deaths, especially after what seems like a totally minor change, like adding just one new fish or doing a standard, routine water change. So the crucial point is this: when a minor change triggers a massive die-off, the cause is extremely urgent. Immediate professional investigation is required right then and there to halt any further loss.
I really want to emphasize a critical rule of thumb from the source material here. Quote, frequent interventions can stress fish and complicate diagnosis. When you hit a crisis point, human instinct is to just do something, right? So you alter the filters, you change out the substrate, you dump in a bunch of chemicals. Guys, this is the dangerous troubleshooting cycle of doom. Every single time you make a blind change, you are actually masking the original problem and risking stressing the entire ecosystem even further.
Section 5. What to expect next. Professional rescue. Okay, calling in a professional isn't a defeat, it is a strategic rescue. Let's move to the professional playbook and see how this builds a path right back to stability. It's highly structured. Step 1 is fast problem ID, so immediately confirming your tank cycling and chemistry. Step 2 is system assessment. They're inspecting the equipment, the flow, the overall stocking. And finally, step 3 is the maintenance roadmap. They don't just magically fix it and leave. They provide you with a crystal clear plan to prevent recurrence with absolutely zero trial and error.
But listen, you actually have a job to do before they even arrive. If you suspect your aquarium needs this level of attention, you need to prepare. Here is a highly actionable checklist of exactly what you must document before you make that call. Have your most recent water test results ready to go. Know your exact tank size and the specific models of your filtration and your heaters. Write down your actual water change schedule, any recent livestock additions or subtractions, and keep a detailed log of those notable fish behaviors we discussed a minute ago. Providing this context allows the specialist to completely skip the guesswork and diagnose the root cause with incredible efficiency.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to reflect on as you look at your own tank today. Are you managing a thriving ecosystem, or are you just fighting a losing battle against water chemistry and failing gear? Remember, the whole goal of this hobby is to enjoy a little slice of nature right inside your home. If you're caught in a cycle of endless, incredibly stressful troubleshooting, well, it might just be time to step back, gather your data, and call in the cavalry. Taking that one step could be the exact thing that saves your tank and brings all that joy back to your aquarium journey.